Yes, I'm still talking about it. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to a video in which I'm once again going to kind of challenge the idea that what people refer to as woke ideology has somehow diminished literature, particularly focusing on literature published in the United States or the English-speaking world. And I want to challenge that idea that, wokeism, which isn't necessarily even really a thing, is somehow making literature boring and cookie cutter, and that it doesn't challenge old standards, that there's nothing new. And I'm going to do that by talking about, as quickly as I can, 20 books which are, transgressive, which in some ways challenge the form, which in some way introduce new and edgy content, which discuss things that, traditionally people think about being edgy, which is mainly sex and violence. And so I want to talk about those 20 books. I can recommend all of them. I can tell you that not every book on this list is one of my favorites or a book that I rate as truly great, but these are all good reads. And if you're looking for something transgressive, if you're looking for something edgy, I can recommend these books. So the first book on my list is Freshwater by Akwaeke and Emezi. This is the story of a young person who grows up in Nigeria, and they are struggling with their gender identity. They're also struggling with events that happened in the past. They come to the United States. They appear to be having mental breakdowns with competing personalities in their heads. They begin to become involved in abusive relationships, and all kinds of things happen. It is an incredibly intense read and well worth your time. And number 2 on my list, I have one of my favorite books from the last couple of years, and that's Noopiming by Leanne, Betasamosake, Simpson. This is a book which is steeped in really Native American tradition and ideas and folk tales. It basically involves characters who are both human and animals that represent different spirits. From the Anishinaabe group of Native Americans, it is inventively told, and I just thought it was incredibly captivating and powerful and wonderful, and it challenges the normal form of the novel as well. And number 3, I have Northwoods by Daniel Mason. Now, if you watch my review of this, this book really wasn't a book I thought was great. That doesn't mean it doesn't challenge traditional concepts of the novel. It basically focuses on a place rather than a character and the people who inhabit this place over and over again. It involves everything from, insect life to human life, from colonial America through modern times. There's supernatural elements involved in the story, and it kind of blends a whole lot of things together in a way which I think challenges traditional storytelling as it's usually found in novels. Number 4 on my list is The Only Good Indian by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the only horror novel I have on the list because I don't read a lot of horror, but this story involves punishment that comes in the form of a spirit animal to a group of young men who have done something wrong. It is intensely violent. It is the first book I've read in a long time where I was literally saying to myself, almost saying out loud, no, don't do that, don't let that happen. And it happens. Very violent. There is violence against animals. Incredibly transgressive, I think, in the topics it talks about, in the way it kind of blends things together from perhaps Native American spirit world ideas in the real world to make a really effective horror story. Number 5 on my list, I have Ohio by Stephen Markley. This book was published a few years ago. And this book involves kind of a getting back together of a group of people who knew one another in high school. It's not a high school reunion necessarily. They're brought back together by the death of one of their classmates. And we find out a whole lot of stuff that went on at the time and has gone on with the characters since then. And a lot of it is really unpleasant to read about. It is intensely violent. The relationships are incredibly convoluted. There are all kinds of mysteries that are uncovered. And I thought, despite a really bad opening, that it was a really good book. Number 6 on my list, I have The Trees by Percival Everett. Who's surprised to have a Percival Everett novel on my list? And The Trees is the one I like of his the best. This is a satire which really exposes the stupidity, the ridiculousness, the violence of racism and lynching in the South by having characters or people who are associated with family members of those who killed Emmett Till die horribly violent deaths, and their bodies then are found along with the body of an African American man who resembles Emmett Till. There's a little bit of magic going on. There's a lot of kind of really powerful statements, I think, about lynching and racist violence. A really great book. Number 7 on my list, I have Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. This book won the Giller Award, the Canada's Award for its best novel. It is I think the more I think about this book, the more I think it's a book that is full of menace, slowly evolving, slow realization, I think, on the part of the reader that what we're being told is not what's really happening. And there are all kinds of things that are left unexplained, and I think the explanation for them incredibly disturbing. And number 8, Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders. This was a Booker Award winner, big winner a few years ago. It basically deals with the death of Abraham Lincoln's son that took place during the Civil War, and it blends kind of Lincoln's visits to his son's grave, his son's involvement in our connection to spirits who inhabit the graveyard where he's been buried, who haven't moved on yet, who are represented physically in spirit form by the things that they were most obsessed with, perhaps, or the most characteristic of them when they were in life. It blends kind of the form of newspaper headlines and all kinds of stuff in. You don't know what's real and what Saunders has made up. It kind of challenges the traditional novel form, and it's kind of, I think, a little transgressive in the way it talks about death and spirits and ghosts and things like that. Let's see. Number 9 on my list is A Safe Girl to Love, a collection of stories, short stories by Kasey Plett, who's a Canadian writer. This deals with the story of a young trans woman who is dealing with really all the issues that trans women deal with. Difficulty of finding and forming romantic relationships, loving relationships, the problem with being dead named, the problem with being potential victim of violence, the problems with depression, self-medication in all kinds of ways. Really powerful, very difficult to read at times. Number 10 on my list is The Underground Railroad by Colson and Whitehead. Starting off on a plantation in which there are two of the white owners, the plantation and the enslaved population. They are very different in their personalities. When the good one dies, the main character of Underground Railroad seeks to escape, and she escapes by finding an Underground Railroad, which in Whitehead's novel is represented as an actual train running along underground, which it didn't do. And as she travels on the train, it takes us not just through the period of enslavement in the United States of America, but it really takes us to scenes and places and locations that feel surreal when you're really reading them, which really are replications of other events and other types of events that happen throughout the history of race relations in the United States of America. And I just think it's a really great book. Number 11 on my list, I have Darryl by Jackie Ess. Darryl is a cuckold, which means he enjoys watching his wife have sex with other men. And that's where it starts off. And Darryl really is on a quest to try to understand who he is, why he feels the way he is, and he kind of explores all these different options. And at first he seems pathetic, and you kind of, he's very cringy. And as it goes on, you find that you have a real respect for Darryl and his honesty and his seeking out and his attempt to find out who he really is and what he wants from life, not just from sex. Number 12 on the list, I have Night of the Living Rez, a collection of short stories by Morgan Talty. This is set on a Native American reservation in Maine among the Penobscot Indians. It is a collection of short stories that are connected through the characters you're repeating, and it is a blend of I think all the things that we probably know about, like in the abstract, that are true for people who are really in some ways trapped on these reservations in terms of poverty, alcoholism, drug abuse, the kind of difficulty of living in a world where you're dealing with white capitalist society and the Native American beliefs, traditions, etc. A lot of the stories are difficult to read. A lot of things that are happening are very painful. It's told, I think, incredibly well, and the stories kind of begin to fall together, and the whole image is kind of created through this kind of pinpointing of various stories. I thought it was really excellent. Number 13 on my list, on the list I have Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This is really a genre challenging novel in lots of ways. It is an epic fantasy. It involves a quest taken on by a group of very different characters who come from different kinds of creatures, people that inhabit this world. And they're on a quest for something. It is a story about good and evil. There are graphic depictions of sex, incredibly graphic violence, but it's written in a way that kind of mirrors the language of Africa, and it is based on a lot of the folklore and folk stories of Africa. Number 14 on my list, I have There by Tommy Orange. This is an incredibly ambitious story with lots of characters, lots of intersecting stories that are brought together at the end, which explores the problems faced by Native Americans who live in urban areas. It's set in Oakland. It deals with a lot of the recent history of those kinds of Native Americans who live in cities like Oakland and the problems they face, including drugs, alcohol, violence. Incredibly well done, I thought, and incredibly ambitious. Number 15 on my list, I have Mrs. S by Kay Patrick. This is a story about a young woman from Australia who I believe moves to England, where she gets a job at a boarding school where she basically looks after young girls or girls of various age who go to this boarding school. It's an all-girls school, and the only man on campus is the director of the school. This young woman who's struggling with her own kind of what she wants to do, what she wants to be, her own issues of gender, falls in love with the president or the director of the school's wife, and they engage in an incredibly steamy, passionate affair. And in the meanwhile, she's befriended by a woman who works there. I believe she is a PE teacher or another teacher who is lesbian, and they become friends. And there are all kinds of connections and I think incredibly well done storytelling, and it kind of captures, I think, really well the kind of heat of an early stage of a relationship. Number 16, I have Destransition Baby by Torey Peters. This novel follows really primarily the stories of two trans women who are in a relationship, have been in a relationship for some period of time, one of whom is far more committed to remaining a trans woman and living that way, and one who decides to detransition. When detransition, he impregnates a woman, and then this is a novel which kind of looks at how that relationship is going to work out, because this man who's now detransitioned or attempting detransition, this trans woman who's detransitioning, doesn't feel like they can parent on their own, so they want to bring the other trans woman in to be kind of like a third parent in this kind of complicated co-parenting relationship. And I thought that was really new, groundbreaking, inventive, definitely, not your run-of-the-mill story. Number 17 on the list, I have Milkman by Anna Burns. This was a big novel a few years back. I think it's about 5 years old, in which we kind of follow a young woman living in Belfast, Northern Ireland during the Troubles, and she reads. She blocks out the world by reading. She literally walks around Belfast, past bombing sites, past places that are dangerous, reading a book. She attracts the interest of one of the most violent people in Northern Ireland, in Belfast at the time, and she kind of has to turn to her mother to find her way out. And it is an incredibly powerful story about that relationship, also about the Troubles, about the importance that women and mothers played during the Troubles in kind of disciplining people, perhaps on both sides when necessary. I just thought it was a really powerful, really moving story. Number 18 on the list is another one of my favorite books since I've been in BookTube, and that's The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli. It tells the story of a family that's breaking up. A husband and a wife, each of whom brought a child to the marriage, are on the verge of divorce. They decide to go to the American Southwest, to the border area, in part because the man records sound and is kind of a sound recorder, and he wants to record the sound of places where the Apache Indians used to live. The woman is interested in issues involving immigration at the border. They take their two kids. It is an incredibly powerful story about that family. The narration shifts from the woman to the kids at some point. It includes a lot of information which is true about children who die attempting to cross the the border between the United States and Mexico alone. And it has this really kind of neat idea that each one member of the family has a box that they carry in the back of the car, which they're going to put in this collection of things that they've saved from that trip. And then there are photographs at the end of the book of, representing what different groups of different members of the different characters saved. Just really kind of breaks, I think, the traditional idea of the novel, and it's a really powerful story as well. Number 19 on the list, I have Lce As Send by Jesmyn Ward. This is the book that came out this year, and in this book, Ward is going to explore issues surrounding slavery, specifically the trauma of slavery as it's inflicted particularly upon enslaved women. A young woman grows up in a southern plantation where her mother is the cook, and she is, in danger of becoming a victim of sexual violence. And because she won't give in, her mother is sold away. And then she herself is going to be sold away along with the young woman who she's fallen in love with. And there's this incredibly harrowing, powerful story about their being carried from one place to another in the American South, from, I think, Mississippi to New Orleans in the South as a part of the internal slave trade. And the spirit world, which is a part of the story and a part of this young woman's thinking and what her mother's taught her, are always present. And so it's a really, I think, kind of interesting look at that, blending those two things together. At number 20 on my list, I have the oldest book on the list, and that is A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. This book appears to be a series of interlinking stories set kind of in the near past and into the near future, and it involves characters who are involved in the music industry and music scene, and it basically looks at how they sort of kind of destroy themselves and whether or not the redemption of these people is possible. It's incredibly inventive. It's incredibly well done. Just a great book. Anyway, there you go. Those are 20 books, which I hope dispel the idea that somehow in the recent past we have become too woke to have, challenging books, to have transgressive books, to have edgy books published. This list proves that that's just not true. And if you feel like it is true, that no good books and no edgy books are being written, are being published, it's probably because you're only reading books by people who look like me. Anyway, look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.